Let's move on to our fourth main topic today. Chris, what is our fourth main topic today?
Spencer Armandonio writes, regarding the Deadpool situation, I read an interview with Morena Baccarin talking about a possible return, which would be great, but considering Deadpool is directly connected to the X-Men universe, a universe that doesn't exist anymore, wouldn't they need to recast her? Ryan Reynolds too, for that matter? What do you think? Is there going to be a recast?
Well, this is funny that this got sent in because I actually had an interesting debate online the other day with somebody who raised a valid point to me saying, John, and they were raising a valid point. They said, John, now you say that when you recast, when you reboot, you reboot. You don't bring over some of the other cast, blah, blah, blah. I've always said there's only two exceptions in my world. I've always said this for years. Two exceptions to that rule would be getting James Earl Jones back to do the voice of Mufasa, which they then did, and getting, I almost said J. Jonah James to come back, getting J.K. to come back to play J. Jonah. I said those are the only exceptions that I would ever make to that rule, generally speaking. But yeah, I think when you reboot, you need to make a clean start of it. Leave all the other baggage behind, clean start over again. So the argument that the person was making to me online was, with the fact that that Deadpool is a part of that X-Men universe. Deadpool is a part of the Fox X-Men universe, and now that universe is gone. You have to reboot the character, and if you are rebooting the character, then you absolutely have to recast. You got to recast. So it's great that Morena Baccarin is saying she wants him. By the way, Morena Baccarin. Anyway, I get a little flutter whenever I think about her. She's so great. You know what? The two ultimate dream girls for geek boys, I think, in cinematic history. Rosario Dawson in Clerks 2 and Morena Baccarin in Deadpool. I think those are the two ultimate dream girls for geek boys. Rob, you're shaking your head at me. You're not agreeing with me here on that. You don't like that?
Grace Kelly in Rear Window is my ultimate geek fantasy. Okay. Come on. Or Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct for other reasons.
I don't mean to poo-poo on that. But I'm just saying she's
great.
What
are the reasons, Rob?
I'm just saying she's great.
And do you in with an ice pick.
And I love Ryan Reynolds. Everybody knows I love Ryan Reynolds. Good Canadian kid. In the role of Deadpool, a role he was born to play. But if you are rebooting Deadpool, yeah, you got to recast. You got to recast Ryan Reynolds. You got to recast Morena Baccarin. Maybe not even have her character there. However, you don't need to reboot Deadpool. See, that's the beauty of this. You don't need to reboot Deadpool, because while you can make the argument that Deadpool was in that X-Men universe, I can make the argument, no, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. But the X-Mansion was there. Yeah, but that could be any X-Mansion. You look at Colossus. That wasn't the X-Men's Colossus. That wasn't even remotely close to the Colossus that had been in the X-Men films to that point. And yes, they did a funny little cameo where Deadpool opens the door and there's the cast of X-Men Days of Future Past standing behind the door. That was a very, very funny moment, but it was a gag. We also see in that movie that Deadpool time travels, finds Ryan Reynolds reading the Green Lantern script, and murders him. Is that part of continuity? So while I will agree in theory that if you need to reboot Deadpool in order to bring him into the MCU, and I don't want Deadpool in the MCU, but that's besides the point. If you need to reboot Deadpool in order to bring him into the MCU, yeah, I will agree that you should probably recast Ryan Reynolds. But the thing is, the nature of who and what the Deadpool character is, there is no need to reboot. You could bring him in there, a totally different universe, and he instantly makes one joke about it at the beginning, and it settles everything. There is no need to reboot this guy. So you just bring him in, you have him make a fourth wall break joke about it, and you move on.
Yeah.
And you still got the same Deadpool. It really doesn't affect anything else whatsoever. So I will say again, in theory, if they had to reboot, okay, recast, because that's generally what I believe. But I don't see there any reason, whether he's in the MCU or not in the MCU, however they decide to handle it at this point, I don't see there being any reason to reboot the character. So you're damn right you keep Morena Baccarin. You're damn right you keep Ryan Reynolds, the good Canadian kid, and you just move forward. And you can keep the same Colossus. Even if your new X-Men movies 4 years from now have a different Colossus, you can still do it because it's just part of the gag and we're all in on it. So that's how I see it. Rob, what do you think about it?
I totally agree.
I love when you start your answer with
you start dead. I mean, the idea. I just don't understand why somebody would be like, "Yeah, you have to reboot Deadpool." You know what the first line of the movie is? He gets up out of bed and he's like, "God, sometimes don't you just feel you wound up in another universe when you wake up in the morning?" Done. You move forward. Why would anybody want to recast Ryan Reynolds? Those films have each grossed over close to $1 billion each. It's a $1.5+ billion franchise with 2 movies. I mean, like you said, John, you made all the arguments. You don't need to reboot Deadpool. You know what? If I was going to be Daniel Craig and I was in a James Bond movie, I bet I would say, you know what? You can't use Judi Dench's M because she was in Pierce Brosnan's James Bond movies. No, you use Judi Dench's M because she kicked ass. Mm-hmm. I mean, why would you ever change it? Why? It's so weird. And by the way, who would you cast as Deadpool? Is there anybody that could play Deadpool better than Ryan Reynolds?
My philosophy on that, I think we as fans have a flaw in that we see somebody in a role and we I think have a fallacy of going, no one else can play that. I'm sure other people could come along and play it, but why would you?
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Like, so I'm sure somebody else can make a great beef Wellington, but if I've got Chef Ramsay there making my beef Wellington and I know he'll do great, yeah, maybe somebody else can do just as well or better, but I've got Gordon Ramsay here. Let him make my beef Wellington. It's perfect. It's great. You can replace Ryan Reynolds, but why would you? If you don't need to, why on earth would you? That's the part I don't get. Anyway, Chris, like, look, I'm saying if Kevin Feige came out and said, we have to reboot Deadpool, I'll disagree with them, but I then would at least be able to go, I can understand why you'd recast the characters at that point. I just see no need for rebooting, but how would you approach this question?
If Kevin Feige said we need to recast Deadpool, I would go on the internet, I'd buy him a bag of jelly dicks, and I'd send him a note that says, eat these jelly dicks. Eat this bag of dicks, Kevin Feige. Like, what? No.
Bag of jelly dicks.
Yeah, they're little like gummy bears, but they're shaped like penises. You can get them flesh colored or multi.
That's fascinating.
It's a fun thing. I learned that this weekend at a barbecue. Good stuff.
Can you get black licorice versions of them?
Oh, jeez.
Yes, special order. So you don't need to reboot this. He exists in his own little pocket universe. He's meta, as my friend Megan said. Deadpool is the honey badger of Marvel. He don't give a fuck. He's going to show up wherever he wants to.
Right.
And like Rob was saying, he's waking up. He's in another universe. I would love if he had little woodland creatures come greet him. And then he just murdered everything and was like, all right, back to my shit.
Also, John, you really pointed something out that I think he's not really in any universe.
Yeah.
He's in his own universe. And I think the idea of bringing Deadpool, at least as he is currently portrayed or has been portrayed, bringing him into necessarily the MCU proper isn't a great thing to do.
Yeah, I'm not hyped on that idea.
No, I'm
sure Feige would figure out a way to make it work, but in principle, I don't like the idea.
You can bring the MCU into a Deadpool movie, but I don't think you should put Deadpool in an MCU movie, if that makes any sense.
It should be small. It should be like how Ryan Reynolds was in Hobbs and Shaw. You know, just pop in, give it that little Ryan Reynolds sprinkle on GTFO.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Well, listen, that is actually the topic of today's question of the day. I asked you guys today, and on my Twitter account, which you can find me and follow me on Twitter simply at John Campea. By the way, that's also my Facebook address. It's also my Instagram address. Anyway, you can go over to Twitter, the John Campea, at John Campea, and I made that the topic of today's question of the day. And the question that I asked you guys simply was this: if Deadpool does go into the MCU, is it necessary for them to reboot and recast it? That was the basic question. And in a total change of events, in which a lot of times you guys disagree with me, overwhelmingly, this might be the most lopsided. Yesterday was probably the closest question of the day ever. Today is probably the most lopsided ever. 96% of you, a little over 5,000 of you have already casted your votes. I put this up just before we started the show today. 5,000 of you have voted. 96% of you are saying, no, you don't need to reboot. You keep Ryan Reynolds. But 4% of you, still 4% of you, and out of 5,000, that's actually a big number, are saying, yes, you got to start over, reboot and recast. I think there's no need to reboot this whole thing. That's just my thought. Question is for you guys, what do you think about it? If you'd like to go cast your vote over there on that poll, I'm going to leave that poll up for the next 24 hours. You can go and do that, or just jump on down to the comments section below and leave your thoughts there.